This was about 12 years ago when I was 16. I was hanging out with three other friends who we will call Taylor, Brandy, and Inma. My friend, Inma, just got a brand new car off the lot, around 20 miles on that car. Literally came off the lot to show it to all of us. I'm not quite sure how we started talking about ghosts, but Taylor says, I have a Ouija board. Let's use it. So we get her board and start trying to use it right in the road, under the street lamp of a suburban housing division of Oklahoma City, and it was around 10 at night. Of course, nothing happens. So we chalk it up to bullshit and decide, hey, let's take this car for a drive around the back roads on the outskirts of the city. And we do just that. I'm in the front seat, just focusing on the road while Brandy and Taylor are talking about something stupid. Now, we're driving along these back roads in a remote, wooded area. The back roads are still paved. We had not been on any gravel roads. His high beams on, I'm just looking at the road, right in front of me. All of a sudden we hear a loud pop and then the car starts making weird noises. We pull over almost immediately. He gets his little key flashlight out, and on the passenger side, my side, the tire was flat. But the more we inspect, we see the cause was something that looked like 3 claw slashes right on the side. Now me and my friend, Inma, are discussing the road and how we didn't see a single thing in the road that could have caused it. When I say the road was bare, I mean there wasn't a damn thing on the road at all. Not even a branch that could have caused something like that. Plus, it was an equinox, so we were pretty high up enough to be able to notice those things. She's pissed she has to change her tire, especially because it's her brand new car. As she's about to open the trunk, we hear another pop. I run around to her side and ask her what just happened. She pulls up her pant leg and there are large scratches going from her ankle and calf area, but also the driver rear tire has the exact same scratch marks as the front passenger tire. The claw marks on his skin are pretty deep and drew blood. We're all terrified at this point. Like Brandy immediately ran into the car and closed the door. We all follow suit and he locks the doors. Discussing amongst us what we just experienced, the logical brain says it's a feral animal. Don't get out of the car, and the emotional brain says a demon did this. Anyways, we call the tow, and he gets his brand new car towed. I immediately told my mom what happened when I got home because I knew if it was something bad, she'd help me fix it. Took me to her mother's. I get cleansed and do a couple of Roman Catholic prayers. But after that night, I have dealt with nightmares and sleep paralysis for years. I still wonder what it was.
This is something that happened to me almost 10 years ago and I still have no explanation for it. It happened after my grandfather died. Actually, after my family found him dead and he had his funeral. I was sleeping with my parents. It was a traumatic experience for all, so that's how I know it wasn't a nightmare. So, we were sleeping and, out of the blue, we hear something singing Merry Christmas, with a robotic voice, slow and horror movie style. Ironically, it was December when this happened. We just open our eyes and look at each other, without being able to move, but whispering and trying to figure out what that was. After a while, I remember that we had a teddy bear toy, dressed as Santa Claus, that was singing Merry Christmas, and was also kind of dancing. So, my dad takes it from above the closed. We kept it there because I haven't used it for a long time, and when you look at it, sees that the batteries were missing, but also, it didn't work for a long time, even if the batteries were there. That's why they removed them. After a few minutes of moving it, singing, it stops. My mom threw the toy and when she went to throw the garbage a few days later, she saw the toy destroyed by stray dogs.
This happened to my dad. My grandparents live in the countryside. They are mostly surrounded by fields and the houses there are not close to each other. My grandfather broke his hip a while ago and my grandmother has been taking care of him, so my dad has been visiting frequently to make sure they are doing okay. Last weekend it was my grandmother's birthday and my dad decided to go through to visit. Here is the story what he explained to me. I was visiting my parents for my mother's birthday and to check up on them. Due to the distance from my place to theirs, I decided to stay the night. Usually I get up in the middle of the night to have a quick smoke and I usually do not finish it. I would take a few pulls and nip it for later. This specific night I got up in the middle of the night to have my smoke. I was standing outside on the porch and suddenly I heard movement in the bushes, almost like something was moving or walking around. I did not think much of it, but obviously being curious I looked out to the spot where the noise was coming from. I saw this large thing standing almost as high as a wolf and it looked like it had a face of a baboon. Still I was not thinking too much of it but tried to make out what it possible could be. This is where I started getting freaked out. As I was staring at this thing, trying to make out what animal it could possibly be, it turns around and looks me right in the eyes. When it noticed me and saw that I was looking at it, it gave this terrible deep growl I have never heard in my life. It turned around and shot through the fields and it was gone. The way it moved was where I realized that this thing does not seem normal. I quickly killed my cigarette and went into the house. So my dad spoke to me about what he saw and then said to me that he was quite calm the whole time trying to figure out what he was looking at. He said he got scared when he saw how fast that thing moved and just disappeared. There are no wolves in this part and also no bears. My dad has never been one to tell or even make up crazy stories.
I don't know how to explain this encounter. And it still terrifies me 3 years later. At the time, it was mid-spring transitioning into summer. My dog was old and had a weak bladder. It was around 3 a.m., which most believe is the witching hour. Now, I'm skeptic about ghosts and spirits. But I do believe in the afterlife. I was just a few feet away from my back porch. Meanwhile, my dog was doing her business as her routine. When I heard walking. This is a friendly neighborhood. Everyone looks out for each other and we're all acquainted. No one has ever trespassed on our property. Since we live on hill and at a dead end, we get a lot of privacy. They had just cleared out the field next to us for some new houses being built. When I saw it, I would say her, because it looked like a woman, but I couldn't tell because it was pitch black outside. I looked at my dog and then back up at the woman and said, "Hello?" It just stood there, looking at something. Maybe me. I don't know. It was silent for a while, and then it started screaming. This god-awful, gut-wrenching, blood-curdling scream. Then it began running at me, at full speed. My dog wasn't heavy at all, and by then she had finished what she was doing. Immediately, I scooped her up in my arms and ran inside, shutting and locking the door behind me. I put her back in the floor, and ran straight to my bedroom, hiding underneath my covers. I went out there the next morning, but nothing was there. Not even a footprint. Still, a few years later, and I don't know what that was. I've been looking for answers since then. I still can't go outside at night anymore past 1 a.m. without my sibling coming with me, or carrying a weapon of some sort. I've been scared since.
This place where my story happened has had a long history with tragedy and death. In its early history, the story goes that a young girl was raped and killed there with one shot to her head. Years later, the local 911 got several simultaneous calls from that exact address, all saying, "Help me. Find the bullet," in a girlish voice. The responding officer went to this location and, sure enough, found a chair under a light and a small bullet casing. Fast forward years later, and satanic cults moved into this abandoned building and performed demonic rituals. Here is where my story begins. A few years ago, a few friends and I decided to go visit a place that was supposedly haunted, and even rumored to have a demon in it. 5 of us go there with a camcorder, digital camera, and tape recorder. 2 of our friends get sent in the building with just the tape recorder, and the rest of us walk the perimeter with the rest of the equipment trying to see if we can get anything. We were there for about 2 hours, and we all meet up again. One of my friends who went inside was acting weird, staring at the ground, not talking, etc. We decide to head home and we all pile in the car. On the drive home, we had to pass through residential areas to drop everyone off, and the odd-acting friend out of nowhere starts muttering to himself. Incoherent and gibberish bullshit, but we ask him what he is saying, and he does not respond to us. He just continues to stare out the car window, muttering until we drive by this one house where he yells, "Stop the car." He is right there. Scared out of my mind, I stop the car in the middle of the road and we all get out to see what the fuck is going on. He just walks over to a certain spot and just stops and points. He lifts a finger and says, "There." We all look where he points and, I swear to God, a shadow moved from behind this tree to behind the house. I walk over closer to it and it moves again. Fast, silent, like it was teleporting. There was no definite shape to it. Just a black mass you knew was there. It was darker than the night itself. It was around this time, my good buddy starts to cover his ears and starts screaming that he can't do it anymore and starts crying. We think he is in pain and rush over to him, pick his ass up and throw it in the car. We decide to drive him to a hospital, didn't know what else to do. As we are driving, the further we get away, the better he is. Eventually he just snaps up and asks what happened to the factory. He didn't seem to know or remember any of the events that transpired in the last half hour or so, and he was very ill for the next few days, but eventually got better. Days after all of this, I go back and check the tape I had in the recorder I sent with him. It started as normal, and you could hear them walk and talk. Eventually though, it just went silent and then became static for a few moments, then white noise again. In the white noise, you could hear very low growling noises and mutterings and grunts and even a few incoherent words in a deep, low tone. Then static again for a good while, then out of nowhere, a girl voice comes on and says in a hushed whisper, "Help. Me. Find me. Find the bullet." Soft, but clear as day. Needless to say, none of us have ever gone back to that place.